Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis. I'm a marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor trained in trauma and addiction. The Asking Why podcast is for anyone on a journey of healing and restoration. If you are searching for answers to life's questions and want to learn more about root causes from a psychological and theological mix, this show is for you. In this podcast, myself and a co-host from Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness will interview guests on a wide range of topics in order to get down to the heart of the problems facing our world and understand why things happen and how to change the world and ourselves for the better. Want to learn more tips and tricks to living a healthy lifestyle? Visit us at Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to meet our staff or book a speaker, go to clintdaviscounseling.com. Thanks for listening and be sure to subscribe today. All right, welcome to episode 54 of Asking Why podcast with Clint Davis. My friend Chandler Hall is here with us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about sports and life. Chandler was a D1 athlete and professional baseball player, and so he's on today, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. So Chandler, tell us a little bit about you and who you are and why you're here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's good to see. It's been a few weeks. So
that's right.
Yeah, man. Played baseball my whole life. That was really kind of what I did as a kid. I mean, from like, everybody says, I started out like 2 or whatever, but I literally have paint marks of my feet in the basement of my parents' house. So it's when it was concrete before my dad redid it and everything, and they put the date and all that. So I really have been doing it since I was 2.
Was your dad a big baseball person, or?
Man, not an athlete, so to speak, but he loved the game. Like that's how we bonded. Okay. Was watching baseball when I was little,
Where are you from originally?
Springfield, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where you grew up?
That's where born and raised until high school.
So what's the team? What was his team?
St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we watched the Cardinals since I was little. We went to the 2011 World Series when they won it. So we were Cardinals fans.
And what's your dad's name?
Bob.
Shout out to Bob.
Shout out to Bob, man. He came and saw me this weekend for my birthday, so I told him we were doing this, so hopefully he'll give it a listen.
Yeah, awesome.
It'll be good. So, but yeah, man, born and raised in Springfield. To my mom and dad, they're still married. Been married 32 years. So they have an anniversary coming up. It is rare in today's world, for sure. I have a sister, an older sister. She's got a husband and a beautiful little girl. Harlow is my niece. So.
And how much older is your sister?
Oh, good. 3-4 years.
Okay.
So she was 91. I was 95.
So you're the baby.
I'm the baby, man. The favorite.
The favorite. The golden child.
The favorite. So, yeah, she's 3 years older than me. So, her husband, Zach, they live over in Fort Worth. My parents live in Flower Mound, just north of Dallas. So, they kind of moved away from Missouri a few years ago just to be closer to me and Caitlin and our baby. So, gotcha. It's nice to have them a lot closer than 7 hours away.
Yes, definitely.
It's good to have family close by. But yeah, man, I grew up in Springfield. I played baseball my whole life. That was, like I said, what I did. I always joke and say I was an athlete before a student when it came to college, So I always had a dream of playing professional baseball. I can remember from the beginning of high school, I would travel year round just playing baseball. Like my parents would just cart me around. And
you did travel ball and all that stuff?
I did, man. We had an academy up there, and I still have, some of my closest friends today. We just grew up playing baseball. My best friend, I can remember since we were age 4. That's how we met, and it's what we bonded over. But now that we're both out of it, we're still best friends. So baseball really brought me a lot of my friends, close friends. And so throughout high school, I focused a lot on trying to get a college scholarship, trying to, get drafted out of high school. I really didn't have a social life outside of that. And had my friends within baseball, but not outside of that, and school really wasn't a focus, So yeah, we just traveled year round, traveled to Florida, California, Arizona, New York, all over the country, played in Aruba. That was a cool experience.
Oh, wow.
So, and we can talk about that a little later, but it was kind of like a mission trip in Aruba, but it was through baseball.
I got you. Yeah, so your parents, were they both Christians growing up?
Yes, they were believers.
Yeah.
If I can say it
Yeah.
like that. They were believers. They took us to church as often as we could because of my sister played volleyball and I played baseball. So it was, it was divide and conquer at that point in time because we were both traveling, playing tournaments almost every weekend. But, we go on Christmas Eve and Easter and...
So nominal.
Yeah. I mean, just like we were when we were in town, basically. It really wasn't the forefront, although they did do a very good job of letting us know that, like, we're made and loved through God. Like, God is the only reason we're here. But, I didn't grow up in youth camp or youth group, But yeah, they did a good job of letting us know that you're not here by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't just evolve, so yeah, they're believers. My great grandfather, he was a Southern Baptist preacher, so my whole family is a family of believers. My grandmother, she actually, when Caitlin and I got married, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but when Caitlin and I got married, we actually got married out of his Bible, my great grandfather.
Oh, that's cool.
It was passed down through the family, so it was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, we were seasonal churchgoers, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, because sports took a lot of time, and I think I see that a lot in families now. Is doing travel ball, doing travel sports, trying to find that balance. And I'd say things are worse now than they were when we were kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think that the focus has shifted from where it used to be about, hey, we'll play travel ball, but not on Sundays. We'll do the Saturday games, and then on Sunday we go to church, and then if we have games in the afternoon, we'll be there, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that what y'all did?
That's not what we did, but that's what friends of mine did.
Gotcha.
That were more, involved in church and probably better spiritually than we were.
Well, you grow, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? That's part of the podcast is having you on and talking about that dynamic for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I got out of pro ball, I coached for a little bit. I thought I wanted to coach, right? Quickly found out I don't want to coach. So, no, I coached for a youth team, and there's a young man on there with his mom and grandmother, and they're like, hey, he can play on Saturdays, but Sundays we're out, And I admired it. Like I truly did, because at that point in time I was a new Christian. I say a newfound Christian because I got baptized right before I left for pro ball. So I admired it. I was like, man, that's good values, raising your son up right. So yeah, I think, like you were saying, the dynamic has changed completely. From now it's, the boys are playing travel ball, or my son's playing travel ball. It doesn't matter, like we're going to tournaments, we're playing every weekend. And the flip side of that is, I think, this is just my opinion, I think you can still be a Christian without going to church every Sunday, right? But I think there's a lot of foundation in church and being there and having the consistency of that. But the focus is now on making the next LeBron James and, Mike Trout or Derek Jeter rather than the next, John the Baptist or... Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, so. I think you have to... I think that's what, kind of part of the podcast I wanted to talk to you through is how do you be a healthy Christian and raise a family and have kids and still do sports but find a balance. I think that's the problem is maybe you used to be able to find a balance, and it seems like now it's really, really hard to strike that balance.
Life is definitely a lot busier than it was when I was a kid.
Well, there's more community too.
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's kind of what Caitlin and I are going through with our son Brooks. I mean, he's 18 months, right? So, we're in church every Sunday and whatnot. He's not going to be a Major League Baseball player tomorrow, so we know that. But yeah, so we're in church every Sunday, so it's a little easier for us. We got a little girl on the way, and I think those are the waters we're navigating right now. It's like, who do we want to be when they are of age and they're playing sports and doing dance or gymnastics or cheer or whatever,
Yeah.
So that's our big focus is like pre-planning for that.
Oh yeah. All right. So you go through high school, you're doing travel ball, you're playing, your dad loves the Cardinals. That's kind of y'all's bonding connection, which obviously for most of us puts an emphasis on wanting to do it and wanting to be good at it, right?
Yeah.
And so what was it like during high school to kind of junior, senior year stress out about college?
Yeah, man. I never had anxiety until I had grown men tell me that I could make a bunch of money playing a kid's game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh crap, then I can't fail. Like I just can't fail, you know? And so I was fortunate enough to where I had parents that put me in situations that, like doing the academy baseball, allowed me the opportunity to get in front of these people, right? And to go to lessons, to go to, private showcases, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very thankful for that. But towards the end of my sophomore year, through my sophomore year, I started getting invitations from universities to attend showcases, and maybe even freshman year, but they can't talk to you until your junior year. It's like July 1st of you going to be a junior. So once that hit, and I had done all these showcases and all that, I had an idea of like what it was going to be like, because I had older people in the academy that, they would come and talk to us, and our coaches would, tell us like, hey, this is how it's going to be. But they can tell you how it's going to be, and then how it actually is they're two different things, because they give you, like when you're trying to get hired for a job and it's all like roses and rainbows and all that. And then you get in the job and you're like, oh crap. It's
tell you the good
here's
parts.
The real side of it. That's kind of how it was. They tell you, hey, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. Like, come up on a visit. And when you get up on the visit, they show you all the great things about,
You're talking about like your junior year?
Yeah, when you start taking your visits, because, they start talking to you at these showcases, on a very minimal level, like, because they have certain guidelines that they can't step across, and they're like, hey, when you get to your junior year and that time comes, if you're still interested, like, let's talk about it, let's visit. So you have your stuff called unofficial visits and official visits, right? Unofficial visits is you go up there on your own dime, like you can watch them practice. They don't take you out to dinner. You just, hey, how you doing? Shake their hand, that kind of stuff. So on your official visit, they pay for you to get up there. They cart you around. You go to the football games. You go to, dinner with a few guys from the team. And at the bigger universities, it's like, this is what I want.
Right.
You see all the pretty girls walk by, and you're like, Dad, this is where I want to go.
Right.
You see the big stadiums and the cool buildings on campus and all that. And so, yeah, the official visits were very cool, like very cool. And then the time comes for them to offer you, because then it comes about offering a scholarship, and it's like you just get dropped in a hat full of names and numbers, right? And you're one of a million. And so you go from going on the official visits, and at some point in time, some of those guys actually had offers already, and they were just doing their official visit as kind of like a, hey, we're checking the box, right? But for guys like myself that, the campus and the baseball team showed interest in, but I wasn't offered a scholarship yet, I was hurt, I guess you could say, when you just get thrown back into the basket with all the other names, and nobody is reaching back out to you after that. You know what I mean? So
you go on the visit, and it's like the official visit, and they kind of, oh, we love you, we like you, we want you to be here, we'll show you around, take you to dinner, kind of dote on you.
Yeah.
And then you leave there, and that's not really the case. They do that for everybody, is what you're saying.
Yeah, for their top guys, right? They're going to be like, hey, we're good, here's your offer, come on an official visit. We'll do all the same things we do with all the other guys that we haven't offered yet, but we have interest in, right?
Right.
For a 17-year-old kid or 16-year-old kid, if somebody offers you the world and you think, hey, they have my best interest in mind, they have my back, they're not going to let me down.
Yeah, they really like me, they know me.
Exactly, man. So, you're naive in that sense, right? And my parents always guided me and said, hey, trust that they want what's best for you, but don't believe it until you see it. Like, have that skepticism about you a little bit. And I was like, oh, whatever. Parents, right?
Yeah.
It's like, whatever. So, and then going into senior year is when you can, get your offer, you start doing your signing day stuff, right? And when those days came, I was just, nothing happened, So I was like, that's when I was truly let down. I was like, dude, what? I'm the type of person, still to this day, if you tell me you're going to do something, I bank on your word.
Yeah.
Right? I have a little more skepticism now, but I bank on your word that you're going to do it, right? Because I do that. If I give you my word, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do it. And so I trust that other people will do that as well. So as a 17, 18, 16-year-old kid, that was still my personality. Mm-hmm. That's what I did. And so throughout my senior year, I had some offers. I had some junior college offers, some Division I offers to smaller schools, and I had a lot of pride. Okay. And I was like, no, I'm not going to junior college. I'm not going to these smaller schools. My dream school is Arkansas. Okay. I'm still an Arkansas fan. I mean, one of my best friends went there, and Arkansas never came, So I was again let down. So throughout my senior year, I started getting the offers and whatnot, and then the pro stuff comes about your senior year, right? So you can get drafted out of high school. For those who don't know, you can get drafted out of high school. You can get drafted out of 1 year of junior college, 2 years of junior college, or after your third year of a 4-year school. And so
once you start school, you got to do 3 years. Is that kind of the process?
At a 4-year school.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Whether it's Division I, II, III, NAIA, right? But at a junior college, it's a 2-year program, and you can get drafted after your first year or your second year. So like I played with guys with the Phillies that I think they had gotten drafted like 3 times, like once out of high school, once out of JUCO, and once out of their Division I that they went to, and then they finally signed after their Division I that they went to. So there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of ways that you can go professionally, and then you can sign as a free agent as well. So I started doing these professional showcases and started having these.
What was your position?
Shortstop.
Okay.
Yeah, shortstop. Played a little bit of, I pitched a little bit and I played a little bit of outfield, but it was mainly shortstop and second base. And so throughout my senior year, you're getting the college. You're not only worried about the college offers, you're worried about the pro scouts talking to you. And the pro scouts are the same way. They have a tough job. They do. But they also offer you the world and give you a ham sandwich. You know what I mean? So
if a teenager's listening to this, or a young college student,
yeah,
what would be your advice about that? Kind of the same as your parents?
Yeah, just trust that there's good people out there. Don't think the world's out to get you, but really weigh your options. Really take what they say and the promise that they say. I mean, ask questions. That's what I didn't do. It was, oh yeah, that sounds great. And I would go and run and tell my parents, and they'd be like, okay, well, did you ask this, and this? I was like, well, no,
Right.
No, I didn't.
Do you think that's because you're at a situation where you feel desperate, you don't feel confident in yourself, you're just, anything that they give you at this point will be good enough?
Yeah, you want to hold on to it, and you cling to it, you know what I mean? So, and I think, confidence in yourself, like you said, or a lack of confidence in yourself is something that teenage kids struggle with.
Yeah.
Females, boys, or whoever. So, and I was the same way, man. I went to school with I'm probably going to lie when I say this number, but I think I graduated with 800 kids. It was a massive school. We were a 5A school in Missouri. And at that time, 5A was the highest level you could have of student enrollment. So I think, going there and being the guy on the baseball team, you have a false sense of confidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? People see what you're doing athletically or socially or whatever. And so you think you're confident, but then when it really comes to it and you get tested, in these certain scenarios I'm talking about, you're not.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about the difference between emotional intelligence and confidence, and confidence in the behavior that you're doing.
Right.
So that could be baseball, that could be sports, that could be education, right? It could be anything.
Yeah.
You could be really good at this behavior or at this role and look great. You could be great at theater, right? You could be the best actor. You could drop lines. You could do all this. You could be a great writer. You could be a great musician. But success doesn't mean just being good at that skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, one, from a biblical perspective, like that's what instilling in your kids and in teenagers, like both, is so important. It's not that I'm anti-sports, but I think what we create is these kids, these people who are really good at a skill, but when it comes down to like dealing with the pressures of what it takes to do that skill and that job and that career, we've never prepared them at all for that.
I would agree, man. I would, because, you know, I think a main reason I wanted to do this with you is to talk about how, like, once you get out of a sport, you have so many guys like myself that are like, well, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, do I go coach? Like I was talking about, you know, I thought I wanted to coach, but I realized quickly I didn't, because at that point in time too, and I'm skipping forward a little bit, but at that point in time when I stopped playing baseball, I was so mad at baseball. And I left on my own accord too. Like I didn't get released or anything like that. Like I left because I wasn't passionate about it anymore. I didn't love it. It wasn't the childhood dream that I thought it was. You know what I mean? And again, that's me being naive and thinking that it would be, and then realizing that it's a business. You know, so.
Yeah, we'll get back there. So
yeah.
I'll keep you on track.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. I want to get there. We got plenty of time. So you're doing the scouting. You realize, like, smartly, oh man, they're promising me the world and giving me a ham sandwich, like you said.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
So I actually, I was fortunate enough to do a bunch of showcases. They're called Perfect Game Showcases, and you can go and play in tournaments. Like, they're very big today, very big. I think it's the #1 prospecting deal for high school guys in the nation. It's a massive corporation now. When I started out, or when I was playing, they were kind of starting out, right? And so I was fortunate enough to be ranked the #1 middle infielder in the state of Missouri, which, you know, to be honest, I didn't know that until about, I think, like 5 years ago when I was coaching this youth team. Like, hey, did you know? I was like, I had no idea, man.
That's awesome.
So I was fortunate enough to be ranked. I played every Wednesday afternoon. My mom would pick me up from school at 12, and we would drive to Kansas City. So from Springfield to Kansas City, it's like 3 hours. It's like driving to Lafayette from Ruston, right? So we drive 3 hours, and I would play. I was on the Kansas City Royal Scout team, and you have to get invited by a scout, and they have like their national cross checker. The national cross checker for a baseball team is the top scout. Like, they're the ones that sign off on you getting drafted.
And this is your senior year?
Senior high school. It was in the fall. It was a blast. It was an absolute blast. I loved it. I was like, this, I want to play professional baseball because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that went really well, like really, really well. Like in amateur sports, they talk about draft stock, you know, and that shot mine through the roof because of how I played very, very well in it. And so I continued to play on my academy team, my spring baseball team with the school, but I didn't sign with anybody. I was like, Mom, Dad, I know I'm going pro. Like, I just know it. Because in my academy, every January, we had a massive training facility. We would hold a professional showcase. So what it was is, you know, you hit BP, you take some ground balls on the field, like all that. You ran 60s, that kind of thing. And you have a bunch of professional scouts, a bunch of college coaches, recruiters. And I got a ton of interest there too, because I was a switch hitting middle infielder. So, like, you know, they're like, oh yeah, we'll take that and we'll run with it. I had some speed. I had a good arm. I was better defensively than offensively at the time. And so at that point in time, I was talking, I think 5 or 6 or 7 teams. And so
Professional teams?
Professional teams. One of them being the Cardinals. So my dad was very happy. He was very happy.
How much pressure do you feel like was put on you by your parents?
None.
None?
Honest to
Which
goodness.
I would say that's the unique part, right? Knowing you now.
Yes. It's honest to goodness. It was all, hey, if this is what you want to do, we'll fully support it. and the day that you stop, we'll fully support it.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I think that's what I see, right, not happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason you are the adult that you are now, we'll get there, but like the husband, the father, one, Christ, and two, having parents that even though they didn't have you in church every day, like, and that's what I think you're pointing to when you say you don't have to go to church to be a healthy Christian.
Right.
True. I mean, you need to because you want the community, but people will say that, but they're not doing any of the morals or the standards or the expectations, and they're not teaching their kids, hey, your worth and value is not in baseball.
Yep.
Your worth and value is in Christ. It's in our family. It's in our connection.
Yep.
And it sounds like your parents did that really well, where I think so many parents, they go, we're Christians, but then that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
And then baseball is God.
Yeah.
Or
100%.
Football is God. And we don't help our kids see that, like, this is actually an idol. And parents yell, baseball too. Baseball, for me, baseball is the worst when it comes to parents in the stands and coaching. And it's horrible.
And so to go off of that, the only pressure I felt from my parents was they knew what my best was and they knew what my best wasn't, right? And so they knew when I wasn't giving my best or I wasn't focused or whatever. And so it's funny, my wife, Caitlin, freshman year we met, and she was at every baseball game after that, right? And so she was always like, your dad's so intense. He always yells. And he was yelling not if I'd make an error. He always yelled when I made an error, but it was because he knew I wasn't focused. And like I knew that. That's the connection him and I had, right? Nobody else would understand.
Right, so you didn't feel shame or beat up on. You just felt like he was encouraging you in the way that he knew you needed.
I truly feel that way, and I think that those were his intentions, knowing my dad. He may have could have done it in a more delicate way, but there's a funny story. We were at my junior year of college. We were playing Mississippi State, I was at Mississippi State. We were playing Cal State Fullerton in the regional, and I made an error. And dude, we're in front of like 12,000 fans at Mississippi State. If you've ever been there, it's a massive stadium, and all you hear is my dad. There's literally a video on ESPN because we were playing on ESPN. I think it's ESPN2 or whatever. There's literally a video of my dad, or of me. I missed the ball, and all you hear is Bob Hall in the stands. And he's in, like, the top deck of this stadium. And I watch it today, and I just laugh. But at the time, I was like,
what did he yell?
Dad, shut up. He's like, come on, Chandler. Like, that was his main line. Was, come on, Chandler. Because he knew I was better. So, and when I mean he knew I was better, he knew I could be better mentally. Like, I could be more focused. I knew what to do. That was his biggest saying. He said, you know what to do, just go out and do it. That's what he always told me. And so no, I never felt pressure. The only pressure I would feel was, again, they wanted me to be the best person I could be, the best version of Chandler I could be on that day, right? And then there were days where I wasn't, so I felt like I let them down. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like how things are today when parents are living vicariously through their kid.
Yeah, that's what I was more pointing at. That's good.
Yeah, and that happened back in when I was playing too, because I had buddies that, dude, after high school, they're like, I'm done. Like,
right.
And they had college scholarships, and they're like, dude, I'm done.
Right. And that, I mean, we've gotten to know each other this last year a good bit through jiu-jitsu, but like, that was what I didn't, that's why I love doing the podcast, because I don't know I don't know the full story that I'm getting today. I know, bits and pieces. So that was kind of where I'm like, man, I don't know where this is going to go. Like I'm happy for you, right. that's the story. And I think that's pretty cool. Because, the story that I hear so many times in my office is quite the opposite. Yeah. And I think trying to find the balance, like, being honest and going, okay, all parents could do, we're going to look back at our childhood. I mean, when we're older and go, man, I could have done this differently with our kids. But it sounds like your parents really knocked it out the park. Use that baseball cliche.
I have two wonderful parents.
Yeah.
I do. I have two very successful parents.
Because it's hard to thread the needle and do sports and professional sports at that level and do it well. I think it's so easy to fall into projecting on your kids, pushing them too hard, shaming them, living vicariously through them. I mean, that's what I see for the large majority of sports.
Oh, for sure, man. And so to brag on my parents a little bit, so both my parents came from nothing, like absolutely nothing. And they've become very successful from, vocationally, financially, family-wise, like relationally. And so I think that they know what hard work is, and they instilled that in me. And so they were like, hey, it's all up to him now. Just like it was up to us to make our lives happen. Like, it's up to him. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, it's
very.
awesome.
So because, and I think a lot of where the pressure may stem from, if we're talking about, parents living vicariously through their kids, is from parents who played the sport at a competitive level. And the kid already feels pressure, right? Oh, like my dad played Division I baseball. Like, I've got to live up to that, right?
Mm-hmm. And I would say that just for those listening who might not care about sports, I would say I see that in doctors, lawyers, chiropractors, therapists.
Right.
Or it's just this, my dad, any successful thing that we idolize and raise up. Yeah, there's automatic off the top pressure of, I got to be this.
Absolutely, man. I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. And I'm speaking from experience with sports because that's what
good.
I came from, right? So I had buddies, man. Their dads played college baseball, and back in a different time than college baseball now today, was like earning a scholarship back then was a lot harder than it may be today, right? Mm-hmm. And so they have a lot of pride in that. When college scholarships were like 1, 2, or 3, and now today we got 12 per, and then in football you have like 80 or 90 or something like that. So, not saying it's easy to earn a scholarship. Let me put that out there, but
statistically, it's more likely.
Yeah. So, and then back in the time where hard work was all you knew. And so those dads would put pressure on the son, and the son may have not loved it like the dad did. And so, that kid's like, oh, I hate my dad. They have a terrible relationship. And then he's done playing baseball at age 16, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to, this podcast is to prevent that for people, if they're listening and they have their kids in sports, if they're a dad or a mom, and they feel like it's tilting that way, to find a tilt back.
And I was, now that I have a son, and my father-in-law, I love him to death. He's a huge supporter of Caitlin and I, and he was in my baseball career too. He's like, man, I can't wait till you coach Brooks in baseball. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to. Like, man, I don't have the desire, first off. Like, if he wants to go play catch or go hit or go, hit in the cages, I'll throw BP to him. Like, no problem. If he wants to play golf, I don't care if he even plays baseball, like, do what he wants to do. But I just saw a lot of the guys I play with that their dad was the coach. They didn't know when it was dad or coach.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, like...
Yeah, I do know that.
Like, outside of the field, it's always coach. It's like, hey, like, if he had a personal problem or, like, a school issue, he's like, am I going to my coach or am I going to my dad? And I was very thankful that my dad never coached me. Maybe because he didn't have the time, right? But he was just always there to support. He was always dad. And if I had a bad game, he was there to listen. If I had a good game, he was there to praise me and be like, hey, you did great, man. Like, so yeah, I had 2 rock star parents, man.
That's awesome.
Really good. And then I have an amazing sister, and she's a huge supporter of mine. I mean, so yeah, I had a really good family.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened? So we're getting we're getting to the.
I'm a talker, y'all. If y'all can't understand.
No, it's great. This is what the long form of podcast is. I mean, I think, again, like I told you before, like this part of having a conversation, man. People love it.
Yeah, for sure.
And nobody hears this stuff. People think they do.
Yeah.
And then they going through listen to our other episodes. I know you listen.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, I never knew that about firemen, or I never knew that about chiropractors.
Yeah.
Like, people actually care about how this turns out, and I think it's part of our society's problem is we have all these assumptions about baseball and sports and these things about, oh, it's just a dream, right? You go through baseball, you just play in high school, and then it just happens, and then everything's great. And it's just not the reality. So
it's not, man, because I think what our society's so good at is making everything look perfect, right? The social media lifestyle.
Especially now, yeah.
Especially now. But it's not. So, yeah, senior year of high school, it came and went. School ball was okay. So if I don't tell this part of the story, you're going to miss the whole thing. So my senior year of high school, we were playing my rival high school that had all of my best buddies growing up on, right? So it was high stakes, high pressure. And it was like the 5th inning. In high school, we only play 7 innings, right? So it was almost into the game. And one of my buddies hit a ball up the middle. So for those that don't know baseball, like, shortstop is on the right side of second base if you're looking at home plate. So he hit a ball to my left. I'm running to my left, and I did kind of a sliding pirouette, I guess you could say. And when I did that, I dislocated my shoulder. Dislocated my shoulder, and I had a partial tear in my labrum from 5 to 6 o'clock. And at that game, at that game, we had like 2 weeks left in the high school season, right? So that ends in May, and the draft happens in June. So like all the big scouts for professional teams are there. I think I had like 11 scouts there, dude. And there's 30 Major League Baseball teams. So you're like, oh, 11 out of 30, that's not too good. It's
crazy.
It's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah. Just to see you.
Yeah, and especially in Missouri. Like if it's Texas or Florida or California, that's pretty common nowadays because they have great talent. But in Missouri, that's not really seen a whole lot. And there was another kid on the other team that he was a stud baseball player, a lot better than I was. So they were looking at him, me, and so. But dude, I can remember I did that, and my shoulder popped, and I couldn't throw the ball because I couldn't bring my glove to my hand. My glove had the ball in it, and I couldn't bring it to my throwing hand. And when they saw the trainer run out there, when they saw her run out there, they left. Just left. Like, had no idea that I would have been okay. Like, they just had no idea. Because I just kind of sat there, and I was like feeling my shoulder. And
so all the scouts just left?
Just left. Like, literally packed. They always carry a duffel bag or a backpack. Or not a duffel bag, but like a shoulder bag or a backpack. Put their stuff in there and took off. And
because they knew you were hurt, or because you missed the plate?
Because they knew I was hurt.
Yeah.
And and that's the other pressure that comes with the draft or recruiting at all. Is that if you have an injury, it's just like, so I'm talking one of my best friends, childhood best friend. He's about to go through Hell Week at Buds, and he's what do they call
Navy
it?
SEALs for people who don't know.
Yeah, for Navy SEALs. Yeah. So he got, what is the term? Where he got rolled back.
Okay.
Yeah. He got rolled back because he already got hurt, and so he's feeling that same pressure. Like, if I get injured again, I'm gone. It's the same thing with recruiting. Like if you get injured in amateur sports, if you have Tommy John surgery, like where you get your UCL replaced, or you have a shoulder surgery, knee surgery, whatever, you're kind of like, you're not the person they're looking for anymore.
Right. You're the runt.
Yeah. So that's the added pressure, right?
Yeah. I see that, man. My kids are 7 and 4, and the practices and the coaching and the pitching practices and the catching practices and stuff that people want you to do for baseball here now, again, I'm not 100% against it, but I see so much injury in 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds who throw their shoulder out for the rest of their life.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've over-practiced and over-performed, and their bodies aren't ready for it, and they haven't developed.
Oh, yeah.
I have a couple of people that I see, and if they listen to this, they'll know who they are, but they do a great job. And they have 3 boys, and, they do travel with all of them. But they're really mindful about not, it's the margin for error now is so small.
Yeah.
Because the culture doesn't care at all about your kid's body.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to produce these mass groups of kids who are going to, all their success is going to be in sports. They're going to make money. They're going to have a good career, and that'll make them have a good life.
Yep.
And their parents will have a good life, and everybody will be happy because they're making millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're well known, or whatever the ladder is they're trying to climb up. And they're not mindful about how easy it can go this way or this way and into disaster. And which is highly more statistically likely than you ending up being a professional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the honesty of this conversation. It's it's much needed, because I can remember I was on a visit at TCU, and Jim Schlossnagel was the coach there. And he was talking it was a group of us that were on a visit. And he was talking to us, and he's like, man, I love recruiting kids that play multiple sports. And we're all kind of like sitting there like, well, what about just the kids that play baseball? We're dedicated to baseball. You're a baseball coach. Like, that's what we thought you would say. He's like, no, because of the overuse of baseball or burning out, like getting burnt out of baseball is a legit thing. Mm-hmm. And because it's like just in the big leagues, they're having conversations right now about shortening the season. It's 162 games in like 6 months.
Oh, it's insane.
I can remember my first year of pro ball, we had 3 days off. Played 142 games. We had 3 days off.
Yep. I use this example all the time, but I went to, I can't remember the last, oh yeah, dude, let's see. We were in Nevada. So what team would that be? The Diamondbacks?
Diamondbacks or Arizona.
Yeah, I think it was Arizona.
Yeah.
We went and watched the baseball game, and I was there for a training for therapy, addiction thing. And I remember sitting there and I was like, I couldn't enjoy the game because all I could think about was how many days these guys were missing their family and their kids. You know, I just had a little kid, like I think Grady was like 1 or 2, and I was at this thing and I was gone for 3 days, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be away from my 6-month-old for 3 days. Like, and I remember being miserable, like missing that time. And then it was the first time I ever connected how many days that is.
Oh, it's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that's, I wouldn't say that was the number one reason I left, but Caitlin and I were engaged. We were about to get married at the end of my second season. And I was just like, dude, I'm going to be gone for 7 months. 7 months before we're supposed to get married. Like, how can we go through the premarital counseling? You know, and you and I, we love Lucius, right? Yeah. So Lucius and Lee McGee, shout out to them. They were doing our premarital counseling. And man, I was just very aware of that. I was like, dude, how am I supposed to get ready for the woman I'm supposed to marry? Go through all this together when I'm gone at the end of February. I don't get home until the beginning of October. Mm-hmm. Like, and for those who don't know, you have the All-Star break. That's it. Like, and that's a 3-day break. And that's what I'm saying. Like, outside of the travel days that we had scheduled, we only had 3 days off. And unless you were if you got voted to be an All-Star, then you had no days off.
Right.
So it's like, man, that's just,
because it's work.
Oh, it's work. You get to the field.
Hold on, don't jump yet. Right, yeah, we're gonna get there. I'm gonna take you back. So then what happened? So your senior year, you're in this moment. You tear your shoulder.
Yep.
Scouts leave.
I played 2 days later. I had a torn labrum, dislocated shoulder. I played 2 days later because I put that pressure on myself. I was like, man, I've got to play. And so I missed one game. That was on a Tuesday.
Bob, you let this boy play with a torn shoulder.
No, this is my own stubbornness.
No, I just messed it.
This is my own. But he was probably proud. He's like, tough it out, son. Right. You know. But yeah, so I played 2 days later. I fully remember trying to jump up for a ball. Like, a line drive hit over my head and tried to jump up and catch it. And my shoulder just sublexed out of place. Ugh. Oh, dude, it was terrible. It was terrible. So I played, did some physical therapy stuff, like some bands, popped plenty of ibuprofen, and just toughed it out, man. It was hard to finish swings one-handed, and that was kind of like my swing was going through the swing and following through with one hand. Like,
King Griffey Jr.
Yeah, I was trying to look good, man, right? So I could barely do that. I could bunt, okay? So I literally would try to bunt for a hit every time because it hurt to swing. And luckily the season was coming to an end, so yeah, man, I'm not the brightest. So
no, but it does speak to idolizing things.
Yeah.
To the point of your body, your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't teach our kids to push through things. We certainly should.
Right.
But there's a spectrum.
There is. When I'm, I can't sleep on my left side because I'm in so much pain, but I still want to go play. I'm still working out with a torn labrum and dislocated shoulder, like.
At 18.
Yeah, 18 years old, man. Like, oh, dude. And my parents were like, dude, just step back. You've still got summer ball. You've still got all of this. I was like, no, but the draft happens in June.
Yeah.
It's in June, right? And so we're already in May. I'm like, dude, I can't. So, yeah, man, we had plenty of fights about that. My parents did, but they loved me through it. And, again, they're wonderful. But, so, yeah, the summer happens. I don't get drafted, obviously. And one of my best buddies does. And I was both happy and just, truthfully, I was very happy for him. He deserved it. He was a stud. But I was also like, that could have been me. Right, so there's number 2 where I'm just depressed, like absolutely depressed. And so if you remember back, I didn't sign to a college. I was like, hey, I'm going pro. I'm not signing to a college. So then all that pressure of me, like, hey, oh crap, I've got to find a college to go play at now because I went on these visits and I didn't commit to them. So surely those spots are already signed for and taken, and they were. And so we were playing down at Dallas Baptist University over there, and Louisiana Tech. They had their shortstop had just gotten drafted in that draft that I did not get drafted. And so they were looking for a shortstop. And their coach at the time, their recruiting coordinator at the time was at our showcase, our tournament, basically in Dallas. And we're playing Dallas Baptist, and I had a good game, and he came over to me, and he's like, hey, would you want to come on a visit? And I told him no. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And just like so arrogant, right? And it's like, no, I'm good. And I went back and talked with, and so like he parted ways. He went back to watching another game, and we left the field. I got an email from, so he was like assistant recruiting coordinator. I got an email from the head recruiting coordinator at Louisiana Tech, who I had never met, saying like, hey, we really want you to rethink your no.
Your rude no.
Yeah, you're very arrogant, cocky no. So I was like, man. And so I showed my dad. He's like, man, they're paying for you to go there 3 days. Like, what is it going to kill you to go there for 3 days? I was like, oh, whatever. So
what was your ego about in that?
They were a mid-major Division I school, and like I told you, it was either big D1 school or draft. I was very prideful as a high schooler, man.
Well, yeah, when you got 11 recruiters coming to see you at a game, I mean, right? That falls into. There's no doubt that you were an amazing athlete and better than so many people, but that's also life.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can be all that around that behavior and around that skill, and then you can tear your shoulder.
Yeah.
Or people can just miss you or look a different direction or have an agenda or not need a shortstop that season.
Exactly.
Or, I mean, there's a million things that can happen that have nothing to do with your worth and value.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors outside of your control.
Yeah.
Right?
Like all of them.
All of them. Seriously. So, like.
But it's good to remember for people listening, because I think parents and kids and young adults who are listening, they forget that, and they invest all this energy and interest into these things that aren't they don't matter really at the end. Yeah. Like when you hear people's stories at the end, it's never any of the things that everybody puts all the energy into that made the thing happen.
Dude, and it's so funny you say that, because I think back now, and me today versus me back then, I'm two completely separate people, right? Thank the Lord. I am too.
You wouldn't be on here.
Yeah. So I think back to high school and all the kids I thought I was better than or rude to, and I'm like, dude, I so wish I could connect with them and just be like, hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, right? I mean, that's the non-jocks or the band people or whatever position it is that you think you're awesome. Or even if you're the best drummer and you're in the band, like you can still get in that arrogant, prideful space of I'm better than everybody else.
And I think back and like, I'm just like, they were the sweetest person. Or that was the nicest guy in the world. Mm-hmm. And I was just mean to him. And high school was probably already hell for him, and I was just mean to him. Yeah. I wasn't a bully. Let's clear that up. I was not a bully, but I could have been a friend to that person, and I wasn't, because I thought I was better than him. I'm here on this level, and you're down here on this level. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. And not to beat the dead horse, but again, I think that's part of the discipleship that me and you have talked about, in other times, of what are you doing relationally as a teenager? How are you treating other people? How are you loving on people? Like this sports crap doesn't matter. Yeah. It's how do you learn to deal with difficulty and deal with systems and deal with conflict and we just don't teach that. Yeah. We've Americanized church and everything so much that we can take baseball or we can take football or we can take sports and we're like, oh yeah, we're Christians and we do this, and it's like, well, but are you? Like, are you following Christ and doing that? Yeah. Or are you just saying that you're doing that and then everything else looks totally different from that?
And dude, I would call myself that person. That I would say I was a Christian even before I actually knew Christ. I would say I was a Christian, and I always had a cross necklace. Always had a cross necklace. And that was something I asked for my mom for since I was in high school. And I would wear it when I would play because I felt like that was, that would make me better, right? I was using Christianity for my own benefit. Yeah, man. It was literally like, please give me 3 hits today, like rubbing the cross necklace. Like, please give me 3 hits.
What's the little character from Major League? What is it?
Is it
Jobu? Yeah. I mean, that's literally kind of how people do it, right?
I mean, we laugh, but that's it.
God and Jesus are these things that, porn stars wear cross necklaces. Like people, I see this on hip hop videos where somebody's rapping about shooting and killing somebody and they have a huge cross necklace on. Like it's just it's no different than a baseball player wearing a cross necklace and saying
Absolutely.
they're Christian, and then treating everybody around you less than you and devaluing them.
And you know what's funny is when I actually became a Christian and I was still playing, and I saw the guys on my team that would, they'd be going out and partying or doing non-Christian things, but they would say a prayer before the game, And I think back now, I'm like, dude, I was still that person. Like, I'm literally pointing the finger right at myself in the mirror.
Absolutely.
And
me too, man. I mean, I remember being in the Army, and people. One of the reasons I became a counselor was because people would come to me for advice. I mean, I was 20 in Afghanistan, and these grown men are coming to me because their wife cheated on them at home, or spent their money, or they got caught in an affair, or whatever. But I was a Christian, right, quote unquote, and I'd go to church on Sunday, and I'd not do all of the things they would do. But I mean, I was still super arrogant, super prideful. I mean, I was real fit, real tough, wanted to be strong, all these kind of things. And man, just the duplicity of my life looking back on that. And again, there's some of that now. I'm a hypocrite in some ways, but I hope that fewer and farther between.
Right.
But the reality is like, man, I look back and I go, holy crap. Like I had a cross tattoo, and, I was in the only one, but it was like, it was the same thing. It was kind of Jobu. It was like, I'm doing these things to look good morally, so I'll have some clout and credibility, so I feel good.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad about when I do all these other things that I shouldn't be doing. Yeah. And just, man, that is a good conversation, because that's part of like what so many people do in so many areas.
Yeah. I mean, and so I was like, I remember I would get so mad, not mad, but like frustrated. Like, dude, like I know what you did last night, and you're over there praying, like. I just think back today, I'm like, I was doing the same thing, just in different instances. You know what I mean?
You didn't drink or smoke or cuss. That's kind of the thing. It's like you pick these particular behaviors and go, oh, well, I didn't do all that.
Yeah.
But you were prideful and arrogant and selfish 100%. And narcissistic. And we we were like, these things are fine. Yeah. And I mean, we do that in church now. I was meeting with somebody this morning, and he's a teenager, and we're talking about baseball and some other stuff, and hopefully he'll listen to this. But we're talking about cursing and not cursing on the field, and I was saying, I told him, I said, look, it's not necessarily about the words you're using; it's about your intention with it. Yeah. You want to look different to these other baseball players, so if you're going to do the prayer before the game for the team, and then the next word out of your mouth's MF or GD or whatever, like that's not consistent. Yeah. If you drop a ball and you curse, that's not the end of the world, but it's being bigger, being more consistent in your heart than it is necessarily your behavior.
It's like, what's the intention of your heart?
Exactly.
What you're doing that for,
Like if you stump your toe and say shoot or the other word, right? It's like God isn't mad at you because you said one or the other. It's your heart posture in that situation. Yeah. So anyway, but I think that's part of what we're not teaching kids in sports is how to be a Christian, a Christ follower, not in name only. And I think it's really hard unless you have awesome parents. Yeah. And to do that on your own.
And I admire like I keep thinking back to, I've done a lot of self-reflection this past year after having Brooks. Like, I don't know what it is, but kids just do it for you, man. So shout out to my son Brooks, but I've done a lot of self-reflection. And because I want him to be better than I was as a kid, or as a teenager, right? And I think back to one of my teammates, Ryan Rippey's his name. He's a basketball coach in Bentonville, Arkansas now. High school basketball coach in Bentonville, Arkansas. He was the best example of a Christ follower. And, not only he said our prayer before our game or whatever, but literally outside the fences on the field, like, in the classroom when we were all hanging out together on Friday night, like literally you knew he was a Christian because of his actions. He didn't say anything, he didn't wear anything.
He didn't have a cross necklace.
I don't think so. I didn't really look around his neck, but I don't think so. No, he's just he was an all around, like, that was my first, I guess, example of a genuine faith. Like a Christ-like faith. And so then I got into college, and I had a few college teammates that...
So you ended up saying yes to Tech?
Yeah, so let me... I'm sorry.
Yeah, go back.
I'm sorry. No, so yeah, my dad was like, what's it going to hurt you? It's 3 days. Just go visit. I was like, all right. He's like, do you want me or your mom to go with you? I was like, Mom. I want Mom to go with me. Because, Dad wants what's on our hearts, my sister and I's hearts. Like, if we want it, he fully supports it, right? He'll weigh the options with us, right? But my mom is, and so she's a woman in business. Okay, so, like, you can take that for whatever. But she has climbed the ladder without having a college degree. So she's worked her butt off. And she's a high-ranking member of a banking corporation now. And so she's a little more stern, right? So she's the one that's going to be like, no or yes. Like, it's a very stern no or a very stern yes, right? So I was like, Mom, just send Mom with me. And so my mom and I flew down into Monroe, Louisiana, and Coach picked us up. And we drove to Ruston. And I'm not joking you, dude. For any of you that have been to Ruston has a different, just captivating feel, right? For first-time people that, have lived there forever.
Louisiana,
Yeah, have lived there forever.
It's a very small, homey,
loving community.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people there are wonderful. It's just a place that I don't know if this was for you, but I felt God's presence there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, I felt it there. I was like, from day one, I was like, all right, this is where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't promise me the world. They were 100% honest. They gave me a wonderful offer, a wonderful scholarship that allowed me to come down there, to come down to Tech and play. And so on day 2, I told them, I was like, yeah, I'll sign with you. I'll commit and I'll sign. And I think the other part of that was the coaches didn't give me a bill of goods, right? They were honest. They're like, hey, here's how it is. We've got a guy here that we think is going to play shortstop this year, but, come give it your best shot. We still got second base open. Like, there's plenty of opportunities to play right away. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to come sit on the bench or get redshirted. If I was going to play at a mid-major, I wanted to play right away.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that speaks to, from a trauma perspective, right? The feeling of authenticity is more important than anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so even if the authenticity is, hey, look, come do your best and you might get on,
mm-hmm.
but we're not going to promise you the world.
Yeah.
When everybody else has been blowing smoke.
Yeah, and
I bet that that
it meant
had
the world
to
to
have
me.
made a difference.
Absolutely, because I'm a big person on like
Integrity.
I told you, integrity. Yeah, just be a man of your word.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all I ask you to be, and I hope that I'm that to you. Right? I know I'll fall short at some point in time, but that's what they were. They're like, hey, we have somebody that's going to be our shortstop. That's going to backfill the guy that just got drafted. But come in and give it your best shot. Like, we believe that you can, take the spot if you want, right? Or if you're good enough to. And so that's all I believed in myself was, hey, I think I'm better than the next person that I'm playing against or competing against. So just give me the opportunity. Just give me the shot. That's what they did. So I signed. I signed July 10th, and school started September 5th. So
nice.
I had to do a little bit of, life adjusting, knowing that I, finally signed with somebody. I was moving 2 states away. So it really didn't hit me because I was still playing, travel ball during the summer. And we had a bunch of big national tournaments coming up that I needed to focus on. And so, yeah, man, continued to play baseball. My academy actually won the national championship my senior year. So that was awesome. It was like, man, if I would have gotten drafted and I would have had to go, I would have missed this.
Mm-hmm.
And these are my boys. Like, they're the guys I've grown up playing with. These are my best friends. So we all won a national championship together before we all went to college. Like, it was the coolest thing in the world.
That's awesome, man. Some crazy memories.
Oh, dude. Absolutely nuts. And I'm still close with like 30% of them.
That's awesome.
30% out of
that's super rare.
It is, man. Yeah. Out of high school. Like,
oh yeah, I tell high schoolers every day when I see them, like you realize like 1% of the people you care about right now are going to be anybody you know in 10 years.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And that's
But yeah, sports does do that, right? It is on the healthy side, there is this community, this bond, this connection, if done right, that can last a lifetime.
And it sports can teach you the genuine relationships that you always need, right? Mm-hmm. Especially on a team when, like, it's not an individual success necessarily. It is, right? Because you're trying to get drafted or you're trying to get recruited. But, like, there's wins and losses at the end of it.
Absolutely. And the best teams, the best athletes that come out of good teams.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They have people. Yes, it can be individualized, but the teams that play together and don't play as a bunch of individuals are the ones that have the most success.
Absolutely, man. And so we did. We won the national championship. It was amazing. It was the best way to end my high school career. So I'm thankful for that, right? I hated it that I didn't get drafted or whatever, but I'm thankful that I was there for that, because that would have meant more to me than long term, right? And so I had like a month and a half. And so here's the other thing. I've never had a vacation during the summer my whole childhood. When everybody is taking vacations, I'm playing baseball. That's it. Like, and we would travel to cool places, man, like Florida, California, Arizona, Texas, whatever.
But you mean just like go to the beach, go to Disney World, go to Astro World, whatever for a week.
Just decompress, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I just almost failed my high school final. Like, just give me a week to decompress, right? I never had that. So we got to go to Aruba, and that was amazing. I got to go with my whole family, a few of my buddies, because it was like a select group that you got, chosen to go. That was amazing, dude. Just the Caribbean has a special place in my heart. Like, my wife and, Ben, our buddy Ben, and his wife Megan, we're all going to the Bahamas next year.
Oh, nice.
We're going, right? So the Caribbean's a cool place for me. I just love being on an island with nothing else around, So I got to go to Aruba with my family, played baseball down there, and got to talk to the community down there through the sport of baseball. But I will never go deep sea fishing again. Ever.
Did you get sick?
So outside of baseball, this is my dad and I's biggest bonding moment ever. We chartered a boat to go deep sea fishing with me, my dad, and then two of my buddies and their dads. And little did I know that when you go deep sea fishing on these boats, it's a single nose boat. Like, it's not a catamaran that I'm used to, that it's even when you're going through this rough water, right? And we decided, we're like, hey, let's grab some breakfast before we go. Well, what's the only place open next to the boat dock? Cinnabon.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I used to be a sweets person, so I crushed like 3 Cinnabon cinnamon rolls. And so did my dad. And we're going out into the waters in Aruba, and we're like, hey, how far out are we going? And the guy's like, oh, we're going a few miles. Like, we're going to get out there. I'm like, okay, cool. Oh, dude, we were cutting through some waves. I don't know how big they were, and maybe I'm exaggerating in my mind, but dude, I just think these are the biggest things I've ever seen in my life. And this boat is just, getting thrown by these waves. And I'm like, Dad, I'm sick, man. He's like, I am too. And so I say this is the biggest bonding moment my dad and I have ever had. We were sharing a trash can puking, and I would hold it back until he was done with the trash can, and then he'd get done and he'd hand it off to me. So yeah, Dad and I will never go deep sea fishing again. One of my buddies, he was out there catching all the fish because all of us were just sick, man.
Dude.
It was, and I missed the meal. I missed the last baseball game. But dude, I was just
so sick.
I felt terrible.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah,
motion sickness is awful.
It is, and when I do drills right now, when we do the rolls,
Yes.
it's like, as I get older, they're harder to do because I like two front rolls or back rolls in. I'm like, I'm done.
The back rolls, I'm so dizzy.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, we've had that same experience. And my dad, we went and saw the Blue Angels, and we went out, and it was just super choppy in Florida to go out to the water to see them, but you could get really good views. And I missed the whole thing because I was just hurling from just being in the water in my uncle's little boat. And
it's like, what do you take to?
And we had to sleep the rest of the day. Like, it was like a day and a half.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
you just
we missed dinner, breakfast, everything.
So nauseous and miserable. I'll never forget my dad, because my dad's a big burly guy, and I remember him just being super miserable in the bed. Like, I got a little over it quicker, and now I understand at 40 how much longer it takes me to recover from everything. At the time, I was like, come on, Dad, you're fine. You know, he was like miserable in the bed for a day and a half.
And what's, hilarious, like you said, your dad's a big burly guy. My dad's like 6'3", at the time he's like 240 pounds. Like, he's a big guy. And dude, I have never, it was like a whale puking in that trash can, man. He was making some noises.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it was quite the experience. And what's funny is the coach of that team saw me on the plane 2 days later, I think. It's like, hey, how'd you recover?
Yeah.
Like, hey, thanks for caring about me, man.
It's hilarious, because he probably remembers what it's like. All right, so you get it at Tech. kind of catch us up on what happens at Tech, and then how that lead you to the Phillies.
Yeah. So freshman year I came in. I played a little bit, not a whole lot. And then we had a coaching change. So my sophomore year, we had a new coach.
When did you meet Lucius?
Oh, goodness gracious. Freshman year?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you meet your wife?
Freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So freshman year, you start at Tech. How did spirituality, how did that kind of kick in? Because I know from there till now, there's been a huge growth in maturity and closeness to Christ and all these things. So
this is why you're the host of the podcast, because I'd be rambling on for forever and skip over all this stuff.
No, you're fine.
So I met my wife. Okay. Shout out to Caitlin. She is the best person in the world, right? I'm not just saying that because I'm on a podcast. She's going to listen to it. Like, she's literally the best person in the world. Most genuine, Christ-like woman I've ever met. So the first time I saw her, I was like, dang, like, she's hot. Like, she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my roommate, I was like, hey, I don't know who that is. And she would do, like, if you're on Tech's campus, she was over by Tolliver, the hall, the eating hall over there. And I was over by, like, Woodard, the kinesiology building, you know? So I saw her, and she was riding her bike with her boyfriend at the time. And, yeah. Don't forget that part of the story.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I don't know who she is. And I looked at my room, and I said, I'm going to marry her. And he was like, dude, whatever. Because we had literally just gotten off of, like, a partying bender, you know? It was terrible. It was terrible. So we went and ate, and my buddy, my roommate that I told that to, he saw her on campus on Monday. And he was like, dang. Like, I think you're the girl that Chandler was talking to. You know, he, like, said hey to her or whatever. And that Friday night, he walks into our apartment, and Caitlin and I are sitting on the couch together. He's like, wait a second. He's like, you actually met her? I was like, yeah, I met her. So then we started talking and hanging out and whatnot, and but she saw who I was. She saw how lost I was, right? And I was trying to make everybody think I was perfect, right? And going out doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing, partying, you know, on Monday nights, karaoke bar at the Rev. That was not a great decision. And she saw that it was fake. She's like, hey, I know there's more to you than, like, what you're doing right now. And she's like, I'm not interested in that person. She's like, and then second off, you and I are never going to get together unless you know who Christ is.
Mic drop.
I was like, dang, a girl has never talked to me like this before. I was like, she's different. I was like, she is different. And so I was very intrigued. I was like, okay, so I was like, she's pretty. I like her. All right, I'll get to know Jesus. I'll get to know Jesus. I was like really weighing my options there. And so one of my teammates, Braden Bristow, he's playing in the Yankees organization still right now. Braden was going to Lucius's group. And he's like, hey, dude, just come over.
So backstory for people who are listening. So Lucius McGee, he's a friend of ours. He lives in Ruston. He works for Argent, right?
Yep.
And so when I was in college, me, Lucius, and our friend Stephen McMullen, we were going to Christ Community at the time. It's the Bridge now. But we all met. Lucius was mentoring me and Stephen, and so he asked us to come and help lead a 9th grade Bible study for boys. Yep. And so it was me, Lucius, and Stephen. They called us the Tribunal. Yep. And at the time, I was kind of where you were. I was this yoked up Army guy who just graduated, who was doing all these deployments. And Stephen was this, he was in his doctorate, going to get his he was going to be a physician, and Lucius, this older, you know, sweetheart of a guy, hunter, you know.
The best.
And so we all led these guys, freshman, sophomore, I think junior year. But during that season, I mean, I was kind of like you. I'd known Jesus, but I'd just gotten back from Afghanistan, and then Hurricane Katrina happened. And it was in that moment of leadership with Lucius that I was like, I've got to step my game up. And kind of the same thing. I met my wife, and I was like, I don't want to hook up with her. I don't want to do the thing that I've done with all these girls. I want this to be different. Yeah. And that didn't go perfectly, but God worked it out. But Lucius was such a invaluable person in my life, and I'll never forget going to this kids retreat, youth retreat, and like me and Stephen both are at the end. We're supposed to be leading it, and at the end we're just like weeping, and all three of us are hugging and crying and kind of renewing our walk with Christ, and so I have this piece of art. I'll show it to you, but the kids drew it,
Yeah.
and some of those guys have gone on to play for King and Country, and to do these huge things.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when me and you were talking at jiu-jitsu, and there was just that connection piece, it was huge.
Yeah. Because not only, like you said, Lucius is one of the sweetest people in the world. His nickname is Sweet Lou, for all those that don't know. He is somebody that holds you to a standard. If you say you're a Christian, he's going to hold you to a standard, call you out when, just like the Bible tells us to hold our brothers accountable. He's such a dynamic person.
Oh, yeah.
And a huge influence. Like, he married Caitlin and I. I mean, he's just a huge influence in our lives. So Braden invites me to his group, right? And, man, so the only person I knew that had the name Lucius was Lucius Fox off of Batman. So Morgan Freeman plays Lucius Fox.
Yeah.
So I was like, this dude's about to be super wise. Like,
Yeah.
And Lucius is wise. But he was not the person I had made in my brain. Like, he's going to be this tall, built, Lucius, that's a strong name, man. I saw Lucius. I was like, no, this isn't Lucius, because he's got his bifocals. He's, bawling on top, Lou, I love you. I'm not hating on you.
That's right.
But he's just, like I say, he's a dynamic personality. So the first night at his group, I was like, oh, man. Like, just spoke straight to my heart,
Well, and I think it's a great contrast for everything else we've been talking about is that for guys who are jocks or guys who have this perception of what a strong person is or what a healthy person is or baseball player, athlete, coming in, you're expecting this Christ figure to be,
masculine
in a way that's toxic, and Lucius is an amazing masculine person, but I think does a really good job of the strength is in Christ. And I think you would say the same thing. Like, he doesn't put off, I'm perfect. He's vulnerable. He's open. He's honest. He's transparent, but that's what strength is.
Yeah. I thought he'd be this, 6'5", 250 pound, just yoked man, and Lou, he's not, but he's the strongest person I've ever met in my life, and so the first night at his group, somebody was doing a life map. I think Lou was doing his life map, and Lou has a crazy life map. And so it's like, man, him and I haven't struggled with the same things, but we kind of have, just not in the same, I guess, way, circumstances, whatever, but, at the end of it, like, we're still struggling with some anxiety, some depression outside of there, and a lot of self-inflicted doubt, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think that's a key point for people is, aren't we all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we can, this podcast is about baseball and your career, but ultimately that's the beauty of, like, all these podcast episodes is that we're way more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
And whether it's baseball or being a doctor or being a stay-at-home mom or, being a therapist or whatever it is that you're doing and struggling with, that's all content to the actual issues.
Yep.
There's only a few, 3 or 4 issues that are really going on for all of us that plays out into all the content.
Yeah.
And America does a really good job of pushing the content and the focus of being on behavior modification and fixing and treating symptoms instead of getting to the root cause. And I think for both of us, which is crazy as we're talking about now, that's where Lucius and that relationship, met was like men in our lives who got to the root instead of like staying with this content crap.
And it's weird, man, because like, you should feel, I guess, or I felt like I should be able to go to my dad with that, but I wasn't comfortable doing that, because my dad's my strong figure in my life, right? But Lucius, he comes from such a humble approach. And it's like, I could tell this dude anything. I still do tell him everything.
Right.
Like, he's not replacing my father figure in my life at all. It's just like, he's there to listen. He's there to hear you. He has the spirit of Jesus in his heart. So, like, when you're talking to Lucius, Jesus is there with you.
Yeah. Well, it's such an important focus, too, is that's such an American view of you have this father figure and he's everything and he should. No, number one, that's a lot of pressure on the dad. Yeah. And number two, like, what happened to having 4 or 5 men in our kids' lives that can speak into it? Like, one of the things we're planning on doing when my son turns into a teenager is having 4 or 5 or 6 men have a ceremony and sit down and talk to him and speak into his life. And we've just lost that thing because we don't have enough men that are our friends to do it. Yeah. Like, our dads didn't have enough men in their lives. They were surviving. They were making do. They were coming up from nothing. Yeah. And they didn't have enough close people and community in their life to then sit our sons down and go, hey, it's not about this stuff, it's about this stuff, and this is who Christ calls you to be. And so
Absolutely. And it's funny now because a lot of those men are the men that spoke to me, and they'll probably still be the same men that speak to Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think it's going to come full circle. So, you know, freshman year, I kept meeting with Lucius's group, and so I finally, sophomore year, is right before the Camp Bethany, the FCA camp.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I feel this tug on my heart. You know, my buddy Braden, who brought me to Lucius's community group the first time.
This is the Yankee?
Yeah, this is the Yankee. He's an awesome fella. He kept telling me, he's like, man, what you're doing, like, you can't continue to do that and follow Christ. Like, that's just not how it's supposed to be. You know, he did it in a more, you know, elaborate way because he's a lot smarter than I am. But he was like, man, you've got to give your life, you've got to fully submit to Christ. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so we were going to FCA camp, and it's just a bunch of athletes from, you know, Southern, LSU, UL,
Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yeah, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Louisiana Tech, Monroe. It's just a bunch of schools in Louisiana, and then we all go to Camp Bethany right outside of Shreveport. They have a band, they have, you know, breakout groups, food, worship sessions. I mean, it's just awesome. And then they have a day where every night at worship, they have a time where you can, you know, give your life to Christ if you feel like Christ is calling you. And so I did. It was me and one other guy. Oh, it was a buddy that played football. And we were like, dude, we just felt the pull. So him and I just walked back to the room. We said that, you know, our prayer to bring Christ into our lives, and man, it was just amazing. And so, like, they were doing baptisms that day as well, or the following day out in the lake out there, or the pond, or whatever it is. So, man, I don't, because Caitlin wasn't there. My mom wasn't there. My dad wasn't there. I was like, I just don't feel like this is the right place to be baptized. So I talked to Lucius about it, and he was like, man, yeah, you want your family there. Like, this is a big moment, you know? And so it was January 25th or 26th of Camp Bethany, and I didn't get baptized until September 6th of that same year, but, you know, after the baseball season and all that.
What year was this?
Oh, goodness gracious. 15, I think. And so American brain comes on and says, dude, I just got baptized junior year of college. It's going to be perfect. I'm going to get drafted. I'm going to play professional. Right? Man, it was that. After I got baptized, between then, because in the fall in college baseball, you have a full fall, right? You play scrimmages, you practice, you know, you do your pro showcase, like that prepares the scouts to come and watch you in the spring, right? They're like, hey, he's on our radar. Let's see how he does in an actual baseball game. So one thing I didn't mention in high school is, you know, when you're interviewing for a job, you have to go through the human resources department of the corporation or whatever company you work for. There's a human resources corporation for Major League Baseball, but it's all done in psychological tests. Okay, so you have to do. As a 17-year-old at the time, I remember sitting down at my kitchen table with a stack of 50 papers, asking me questions if, when I go to the park, do I slide down the slide or play on the monkey bars?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's that kind of psychological evaluation. So I'm like, dude, why am I going to a park? I'm 18 years old. You know what I mean? Like, that's my first initial thought. And so I did those, right? Well, that puts you in the system, in the Major League Baseball system, and they see if you didn't get drafted or signed previously to the year that somebody re-enters you in the system. So I'm going through all these psychological evaluations again, doing them, filling them out.
This is in college.
This is my junior year of college. This is after the fall of my junior year of college, getting ready for my junior spring. Okay, this is 2015 fall, 2016 spring. And I'm doing all these psychological evals, and I'm the same questions that I did 4 years ago. but I see it in a whole new, like, frame of mind. You know what I mean? Because there's questions on there about your character, about everything else. And so I'm doing these evals, and I'm like, man, I'm thinking through the lens of Christ rather than the lens of my selfishness, right? And so that was my first realization of, like, hey, life is different with Christ. You know, like how you think, how you approach situations, how you do psychological evaluation tests. You know what I mean? And so the spring comes, and I was playing very well. Not my first few games. I was like 0 for 10 or 0 for 11. But after that, I started playing very well. I was the hitter of the week for the whole conference 1 week. So full circle, I told y'all my dream school is Arkansas. So, and one of my best friends played at Arkansas. So we went up March 2nd or 3rd or something like that, 2016, to play at Arkansas. Well, at the time, Arkansas was like number 3 in the country, okay, or number 4 in the country. And we beat them at Arkansas. Like a team that just went 25-27 the year before, you know, we hit our hot streak and we beat Arkansas in the midweek. So we were starting to feel ourselves, right?
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and I was feeling my oats again, and so that was the same week I think I got like Conference USA Hitter of the Week or Player of the Week or whatever it was, and so then I start to fall back into the trap of I'm doing this by myself. I didn't think like that, but it was like, this is my own doing. Like that's how I thought of it, right? And so, you know, some things are the season progresses. And we're on a hot streak. Like this is the first year since like 1986 that Tech has had, you know, a winning baseball team, you know, leading the conference or like 2nd or 3rd in the conference, in ranking. And so I was like, all right, it's happening. Like it's the year. I'm having phone calls about the rounds of the draft, about money. You know, I'm meeting with scouts after practice, before practice. Like it's all happening again, right? But through this time, my faith was getting hammered, like absolutely hammered. I was, again, saying like, hey, I'm finally doing it. And so after being baptized September 5th of that fall, springtime comes around, and it's like I'm the same person I was in high school. And so that kind of sent me into like
how'd your girlfriend handle that?
She was always there to keep me in check.
Yeah.
Always there to keep me in check. And she still is today. I mean, girlfriend at the time, wife now. She's like, hey, you know, things are going really good for you. You know, she always speaks from both of us. You know, she thinks of us before individual. She's like, things are going really good for us. Like, the future's looking great. Like, don't get too big for your britches, you know. And yeah, baseball's going good. School's going good. Because she was wanting to go the PA route, wanting to go the PA school and everything. She's highly, highly intelligent. I always tell people she's the brains of the relationship. I'm the beauty. So when she's actually both of them. And so, you know, school's going good for her. School's going good for you. And she's like, just don't get too big for your britches. Like, don't think you're lifting up the world right now, you know. So it's like, okay, you know, that's a good point. But then I fell back into the baseball. So then I hit a slump, as we call it in baseball, to where you struggle hitting for a little bit. And it's towards the end of the season, and all these scouts were there to watch you. And I think I was down to like 3 or 4 teams that I had fully talked to, like, hey, you're on our radar for this round or that round. And so, and they were there at every single game. They were there for me and I think 3 pitchers. I think there was another position player too. Anyways, and so that pressure came back, that self-inflicted pressure of, hey, you have to be perfect. Well, then the day I tell myself I have to be perfect, I go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. You know, you press so much that you're just like, hey, I've lost all my natural ability.
Yep. Overthink
I've
it.
lost, yeah, absolutely. So I hit the slump right before the conference tournament. And then I was just like, God, what are you doing to me? Like, why are you doing this? when it's all self-inflicted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just kind of like stepped back from my faith, and I was like, I was better when it was just me, or I had you at an arm's length, And so that was, looking back on it, I'm very ashamed of that moment, very ashamed of that moment. And I'm not very good at opening up about my feelings. So look at the counselor and therapist over there, So yeah, and Caitlin was like, hey, always know that like God's there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could care less if you go 3 for 4 or 1 for 4, 0 for 4, right?
Or if you reject him.
Yeah, or if you reject him, right? And so yeah, right before the conference tournament, I was like, man, because a few weeks goes by between the end of the season and the conference tournament. I think it's like maybe like a week and a half. And right after the last week, the last game on a Sunday, I was like, I'm done. I'm giving up on my faith. Like this is too hard for me, right? And Caitlin and I sat down and talked with Lucius, and like, man, it like we said, you go 0 for 4. God loves you just the same way as you before that game started, or when you were going 4 for 4. And so I was like, all right. And so I just had a moment of humility. I was like, God, if this is for me, it's for me. If it's in your will for my life, it's there. But I am lost. I am out in the forest, and I have no way out. I was like, please just bring me back to you. And he did. You have those overwhelming feelings, and you're like, you kind of get freaked out by it. You know what I mean? And so I felt it, and I was like, okay, all right. It has nothing to do with baseball at all. Like, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to stay humble. And I'm just going to do what he requires me to do or asks of me in my faith. And everything else is going to take care of itself.
It's almost like there's a scripture there.
There probably is, yeah.
Seek first the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
And his righteousness, and all those things will be added to you.
Yeah. So, and it's funny, man, because I said that same thing in 2016. And then I'm a big Cody Johnson fan when it comes to country music. I love his music, and he just did a Amazon, I guess, documentary of Deer Rodeo. It's one of his songs, and he says the same exact thing. It's like, man, I was trying to do all of this to make it on my own. It's like I finally realized that when I just give it up and say, hey, if this is for me, it's for me, and I'm going to stay out of your way completely. And so I wouldn't say I stay out of his way completely.
We do the best we can.
Yeah,
right?
we do the best we can.
Well, that's the constant work, is to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And you don't ever really get out of the way, but you have to keep humbling yourself.
Absolutely. Humble
yourself. First Peter says to humble yourself before the Lord. Cast all your anxieties, and it's a process. It's not an event.
Yeah. And so, one of the scripture that brought me to Christ, and it's my lovely wife got it engraved on the inside of my wedding band, is James 4:7-8. Submit yourselves therefore under God, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. And so that's for the conference tournament, for the regional. We were fortunate enough to make our first regional since like 1987 or 86. So it was a big moment for Ruston, but it was also a big moment for me. I was like, okay, I see it. I see what God's trying to do. And yeah, these materialistic things, these successes in a sport, that's not what he's trying to show me. He's trying to show me that outside of all this stuff that we put in our lives, like, all he asks is humility. Like, hey, I've got you. Just understand that I'm there. I'm always going to be there, and I love you regardless. And so, I had a great end to the season, junior year, okay? And the draft comes. And again, people promised me the world, and I got nothing, man. I got told by one scout that I was going to be like the 8th round pick for this team. And if you don't know about baseball, all the money is in the first 10 rounds, okay? When I say all the money, like all the 6-figure signing bonuses, 6-figure to 7-figure signing bonuses. And so 8th round at that time was like $300,000. Like, dude, I could buy a Ferrari. I could, all the, the worldly stuff comes back, and I could buy Caitlin a massive engagement ring, right? And so the first round and the supplemental round and the second round happen on the first day. And so the scouts told me, hey, you're not going to be on the first day. Like, don't even watch it. Or you can watch it if you got a buddy on there or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I flew Caitlin up. Like, I had my grandma there, like, who she can't travel, so we had to, like, go pick her up, bring her back. My mom made all this food for the second and third day. And I only got a call on the third day, which is like rounds 11 through 40. Okay. And it wasn't a, hey, we're taking you, because that's the call you want to get. Like, hey, we're taking you right now. Go ahead and watch. Tell your family. It was a, hey, would you take it if we went this low? Like, offered money. Would you take it if we offered you this amount of money? Being prideful, I was like, no. Looking back on it, I'm probably like, yeah, probably. Probably should have. And so draft comes and goes. So that night, I'm in the deepest depression I've ever been in my life, because I had told everybody, like literally the new star of Shreveport. They came and interviewed me, and they're like, hey, we're hearing this, and this. I mean, there's literally documentation in a news article of this interview happening. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm hearing, rounds 8 to 10 or 11 to 20. And, I skip over the draft and whatnot for selfishly, but my buddy that brought me to Christ, Braden, he had an up and down year. He's a great talent, a great pitcher, right-handed arm. But he had an up and down year, and there were some things out of his control that, I playing with him and being his friend, it was tough for him, because there was some stuff stacked way against him from a external standpoint. Okay. But he's a wonderful talent. Like, literally, he's one of the most talented athletes I've ever seen in my life. And all of the conversations with the pro scouts dropped off. But then he gets drafted. He gets drafted in like the 23rd round. So I was super happy for him, man. Like, super happy. And he found out right after he proposed to his now wife. So it was like the best day of his life. You know what I mean?
Meanwhile, the worst week of yours.
Yeah, the worst week of mine. So the draft happens on a weekend. It's like Thursday through Sunday or Thursday through Saturday. So Sunday came around. I was like highly depressed, absolutely depressed. I didn't eat all day. I've never been like that before. So then Monday happens, and I get a call from the Phillies. They're like, hey, we want to give you we know you're a junior. We know juniors really don't sign free agent contracts, but we have a good deal of money because some of our draft picks didn't sign, and we heard that your college coach is leaving. I was like, oh, I haven't heard that. I'm like, oh, you may want to call him. We heard he just signed with Alabama. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Call him. I was like, hey, are you leaving or staying? He's like, hey, yeah, don't tell anybody, but I'm leaving. I was like, hey, great. All I needed to know. And I hung up the phone. And so I called the Phillies back. I was like, yep, I'm coming. Because that would have been the third college coach I would have played for in my 4 years. Now knowing that it's Coach Burrows at Tech, I wish I would have stayed, right? Because he's an amazing person. But yeah, so then I go and I sign with the Phillies. It allows me, my last year of college still paid for, a great signing bonus to buy a wedding ring for my wife, or an engagement ring for my wife now. So it was good. It was good. I was happy. I finally feel like I made it. I fulfilled what I wanted to fulfill, right? So first year of pro ball comes around. It was great. I had everything stacked against me, but it was my personality. I pushed those walls over, broke those walls down, and I excelled. So I got called up 3 times, which is hard to come by, I guess, in your first year of pro ball. And I finally came home, proposed to my wife. It was wonderful. And so then I go to spring training the following year. Okay. All through this time, my faith is stronger than it's ever been. I'm engaged. I'm ready to be married. So I go to spring training my second year, and things are good. I'm with the high A team, and how spring training works is that, where they project you going during that season is who you're going to be with the whole time. So I was with the high A team, bouncing back and forth between the low A and high A team. But I just lost passion for the sport and for baseball. I just lost it. And so they posted rosters. I was praying through this whole time. Spring training's 30 days. I was praying this whole time. I said, God, if this is what you have for me, this is what you want me to do, please it's selfish. This is a selfish prayer, but there was a reason I was doing it. Please allow me to be on the high A team. If this is not what you have me doing, then have me make the extended spring training roster, which is basically you stay in spring training for another month or two until the draft happens and then your season starts, right? So you're literally doing spring training over and over. It's like, it's just monotonous, okay? So all the rosters come out. I've been with the high A team this whole time. I make the extended spring training roster. It's like, dude, that never would have happened in everybody else's sense of normalcy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. So I walked into the director of player development's office. I said, hey, I'm going to step away from the game of baseball. It's like, you sure you don't just want to go home for a few days and then come back? And, dude, tears were just streaming down my face. Because this is all I've ever done, right? It's like, no, sir, I'm done. And it was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life, man. And the hardest part about it was me calling my dad and telling him I was done.
Mm.
And he was, buddy, if this is sure that this is what you want, I fully support you, like he had always done. But I was like, what are him and I going to connect on anymore? You know, what are we going to do? You know? So that day I left, and I came home, and and then the next day I came down to Caitlin. I was like, that's the only person I want to see. It's the only person I want to be with. And that sounds terrible for my parents, but she was my sense of comfort.
Cleave, man.
She was my sense of comfort, man. She was my rock,
yeah.
Right? And so, man, now I know I'm kind of jumping, but now for what I do now, what I have now, I'm so thankful I left baseball. So thankful I left baseball. Because I've learned a lot about myself that I didn't know when I was wrapped up in baseball. I have a wonderful wife. We've got a beautiful little boy and a little girl on the way. Like, we're doing things at 27 years old that not a lot of 27-year-olds get to do. And it's only because of God and our faith in Christ. You know, we're not perfect by any means. Lord, we're not perfect, man. But, like, the only strength that we have, and for people that don't believe or don't understand it, it's like, oh, that's so cliche, right? But it's literally, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't explain it to you, A, because I'm really not that intelligent to dive deep into it and explain it to you. And B, it's just, it's supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so, yeah, man, there's been some struggles transitioning from baseball to a job. But I'm the type of person, I'm very prideful in doing hard work. And maybe not doing things the easiest route, you know, taking a little lap or two around.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now for what I do, like, I'm in medical device sales. It's a hard industry to break into. It's a hard industry to work in. It's very challenging, right? And understanding how hospitals work and how, you know, surgeons practice and all that. But I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love it. And it gives me that competitive edge that I had in baseball. But outside of that, jiu-jitsu does the same thing. And I think you and I have bonded on that. Like, man, it's so humbling. It disciplines you, but it allows you to connect with yourself on a deeper level than I think anything else could.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I do.
So
I try to limit my jiu-jitsu talk on the podcast because I laugh at myself because I'm like, I always plug it somehow within any conversation. I love all the memes about your jiu-jitsu friends versus your.
Yes.
It's like the salad one where he's pouring like the huge gallon jug on the salad. It's like, you know, this is me and my jiu-jitsu friends.
Yes.
No, I could talk about that a whole nother hour. So to wrap up, first, I appreciate you sharing all that with me.
Absolutely.
It's awesome stuff to hear. I love the beauty of seeing God weave through it all the way to the end, and you got a lot more to go. I know.
Lot more.
I can tell you now, 7 years from now, when your oldest is 8, 9, the lessons you're going to learn, and hopefully I'll be right here to support you as a friend and brother. But yeah, man, I'm proud of you. I'm proud to see what God has done in your life and how what he's done in your family, and how he's, despite our failures and our screw ups and our histories, that he continues to redeem and restore, and so that we can not make the same mistakes that maybe our parents unknowingly did, so that we can shape our kids earlier to understand that the world is their mission field, that they are the light on the, light in the darkness, that they're the city on the hill, that there's these things, and that doesn't have to start when they're 25 or 30.
Yep.
That they can do that along the way and reach more people and be healthier. So I think it's an awesome story and awesome testimony for people to hear, because it is the point.
Yeah.
Right. And the baseball is the structure in which we use to tell the beauty of God and what He does, and that's for everybody, whether they're, like we've said before already, no matter what you're doing. If you're listening to this still, you haven't turned us off, whatever you're doing, right, whatever structure it is that you call your identity and your world and your job and your thing, even if it's jiu-jitsu, right? Mike talks about it all the time, that if we're not just helping people and being good human beings in Christ, if we're not looking at it to build community, to build connection, to serve other people, then it's not going to matter.
Yeah. That's like I was saying, I've done a lot of self-reflection since Brooks has been born the last 18 months. And it's like, man, I feel like now my focus is on helping others and serving others, serving my family, right? And outside of work, that's when I serve people as well, but serving others and how God would have me serve them. So like, I know you and I have talked about veterans. Veterans play a big part in my life. May have one veteran in my family, but I'm a big military advocate, and so I know that mental health is a big struggle for a lot of people in the world, but you see it a lot in veterans, and so that's kind of my way I want to serve. And
yeah, I know I still need to connect you with Trey.
Yeah, we do.
Keep our word on that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, comments?
Man, if there's any amateur athletes listening or parents of amateur athletes, I'll just maybe sit down and talk about the expectations for what you have for the sport, or like where you actually see yourself going. Every kid believes that they can play in the major leagues, but when you get to that point to where, hey, kind of like I did, I was like, man, maybe this isn't for me. I was praying those 30 days in spring training consistently and constantly, but so maybe this isn't what God has for me, and that's okay. Like it's okay not to be LeBron James or Mike Trout or Derek Jeter, right? It's okay to be Clint Davis and Chandler Hall that, have a job, that we're not professional athletes making millions of dollars, but we have beautiful families and great friendships and faith in Christ that I
supersedes all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that continues to burn strongly. So I just understand that there's a lot of pressure on kids already. And I think that's what I harp mostly on with my friends or people that I know that have kids going into high school. It's like, hey, listen, there's already all these pressures from his friends, his teachers, this, that, and the other, his or her friends' teachers. Just be there to love them. Yeah,
and let me speak that, whether it's the Holy Spirit or not right now, but talking to me, I think it is. But let me speak that over your life. Just, you have, I feel God saying, you have this ability too in your life to speak into people's lives about sports from a discipleship perspective, right, that other people don't have.
Yeah.
I don't have. I can say it from a knowledge base, like from conversations and what I see clinically, but as we're doing sports, I don't really know how to talk about the language because I haven't been there and seen it. So I just say that to you, like, it's probably common to you to talk about it or think about it, but most people didn't play D1, didn't play professional, didn't give that up. And so you have such a beautiful ability to, as you're growing, as your kids are growing, like, you're going to be in sports with them most likely, or some kind of activity in which you can keep them safe, but you can also keep that community safe. And that is discipleship. Yeah. Because the alternative is extremely toxic and damaging. And so I want to remind you that and encourage you that.
I appreciate that.
That's a beautiful thing that God is redeemed and rescued in you, that you're going to be able to give in ways that you can't even imagine yet when your kids are 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 15. And
no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's because I've been looking for,
purpose.
Yeah, purpose, honestly. So maybe that's what God has for me. Yeah. God's like, Clint, say it.
Yeah,
say it.
That's right. He does that, man. All right, we got to wrap up. Thank you all for listening. Chandler, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys check this episode out. Subscribe, like, do what you do. God bless you and have a good week.